The next stage to fractions is where we're going to add and subtract fractions. Now, when we're looking at adding and subtracting fractions, the thing that we have to remember is in this format, they have to have the same denominator. We can only add like things together. We can only subtract like things together. So they have to be in the same denominator, as that is what is indicating what the units are, what the things are, the portions of whatever it is that we're looking at. So, for example, when we start out with this formula, we have 5 over 8. Erase that real quick. 5 over 8, and we're going to add 9 over 15. The first thing that we have to look at is, are our denominators the same? And in this case, they're not. We have an 8 and a 15. So what we have to do is we have to convert and change these denominators so that they are equal. And then when they're equal, we can perform the indicated operation. In this case, we're going to add. So how do we get these two to be equal? Well, we find the least common multiple of 8 and 15. So when we go through and look at the very easiest thing that we can do, again, we can just brute force this. And when we brute force this, we take 8 times 15, and when we do that, we're going to get 120, I believe, right off the top of my head. Let me double check that with my calculator. Yep, 120. So if we just brute force those together, we're going to get 120. So now we need to go back and look at our least common multiple. And this very well may be the same as if we brute force it. But again, we want to check to make it easier on ourselves later on down the road so we don't have to do as much simplifying and reducing of the final fractions. So if we come in and we apply what we've learned, least common multiple of 8 is going to be 2 times 2 times 2. The multiples and prime factors of 15 are going to be 3 and 5. So in this case, when we look at it, there are no commons between these two, so we can't simplify this anymore. So in this case, our least common multiple is going to equal our brute force method. So we're going to look at a fraction of each of these converting to 120. So now that we understand that, we've got to figure out, how do I get each of these denominators to equal this 120? Well, in this case, since we're just brute forcing it, we're just going to multiply them by 1 of that value that we're trying to get through. So what we want is we want 5/8 to become something, so x over 120, and we want our 9/15 to become y over 120. So the way we do that is we take our 5/8 and we need to multiply 8 times 15 to get it to equal 120. So we're going to multiply this whole fraction by 1. But we're going to change that 1 to be 15 over 15. The same number over itself in a fraction is 1, so we are not changing this value or what essentially the identity of this fraction is. We're just modifying it to be a different base. We'll reduce out to the same thing. So we have 15 over 15 times 5 over 8. And so what we end up with is 15 times 5 is 75, and 8 times 15 is the 120. So our 5 over 8 becomes 75 over 120. And then we have to do the same thing for 9 over 15, and we want to equal that to be our 120 again. So our 15 is going to be multiplied by 8. To keep this mathematically the same, we have to go 8 over 8, which is 1. And so we get 9 times 8, which is 72. And then again, our 15 times 8 is 120. So then we take our two new fractions, our two modified fractions, we put them back into the same order that we had. So we have 75 over 120 plus 72 over 120. And then we perform the indicated operation. So what happens on this is our denominator is going to remain the same. 120 plus 120 in our fractions for the denominators is the same as a final answer of 120 in the denominator. On the top, however, this is where we're going to take the 75 and then we're going to add the 72. And then we perform the operation. So we're going to get 147 out of 120. And now we need to look at it and to see if there's anything that we can take out of this thing. And we've got 147 and 40. So if we break them down, we'll just look at our factors. So 147, its factors are, I guess before we do that, we'll go with just the factor tree. So 147, we're going to break it down. Now again, I'm not sure if 147 is prime. There's no easy numbers. We've got all the other different insights that we can look at. And so what we end up with is the following values. I can take 3 out of 147. So if I take 3 out of it, I get 49, and that's going to split up like so. Now 49, we also know, can break down again, and that's going to be, not break down, because I was thinking it's 42. So 49, I believe, is also prime. Nope, 49 is not. 47 is prime. See, even I have to look these up once in a while because I don't quite remember. So we got to look at 49. How are we going to take out 49? So if we start off at 7, I'm done. 7 times 7. I should have known that. I, for some reason, was not thinking about my squares, my common squares. It happens to everybody. All right, so 3 times 7 gives me 147. 120, so we're looking for common factors to be able to take it out. So I know I'm going to want a 3 out of there because I have a 3 over here. So if I take my 120 and divide that by 3, I'm going to get 40. And then 40 I know is divisible by 2, so that gives me 20. 20 is divisible by 2, so that's going to give me 2 and 10. 10 is going to give me 2 and 5. So if I come back and look, even with all these factors from this point down, I don't have anything that is going to result in a 7 or a 7. So this one, we don't even have to worry about. We can bring it back up to the 40, and we can keep the 3. So what we do is if we have a 3 on both sides, we're going to end up with 49 as our numerator, and we're going to end up with 40 as our denominator, and there is our answer. Now, most of the time when we're doing these, unless it indicates otherwise, we're going to take these values and we're going to just leave them in their improper fraction form. Most of the time what we do in here, we're going to want those fractions. We don't want to have to deal with mixed numbers. Just leave it in that format and you're going to be fine, unless it specifically asks you to put it into its mixed number orientation.